When I got back to West Egg that night, I was suddenly afraid that my house was on fire. It was 2 in the morning, and the whole end of the peninsula was glowing with light. The brightness fell strangely on the bushes and made thin reflections on the wires beside the road. But as I turned the corner, I saw it was Gatsby's house, every window lit up from top to bottom. At first, I thought he was having another party, maybe a wild game like hide and seek with the whole house open for fun. But there wasn't a sound, only the wind in the trees. The wind moved the wires, and the lights flickered, making the house look like it was blinking in the dark. As my taxi drove away, I saw Gatsby walking toward me across his lawn. "Your house looks like the World's Fair," I said. "Does it?" Gatsby answered, glancing at it without much interest. "I was just looking around some rooms. Let's go to Coney Island, old sport. We can take my car." "It's too late," I said. "Then how about a swim in the pool?" "I haven't used it all summer. I really need to go to bed." "All right." He waited, looking at me eagerly. "I talked to Miss Baker," I finally said. "But I don't want to trouble you. What day is good for you? What day is good for you?" He repeated quickly, "I don't want to make it a problem for you." A bit hesitant, I guessed he meant my grass. "There's something else," he said nervously. "Would you prefer to wait a few more days?" I asked. "Oh, it's not about that." At least, he seemed unsure how to begin. "Look here, old sport, you don't make much money, do you?" "Not really." That seemed to make him feel better, and he went on more confidently. "I thought so. Hope you don't mind me saying. I do a little business on the side, a sort of private deal. You might be interested in this. It wouldn't take much of your time, and you could earn good money. It's kind of a confidential matter." I had to stop him. "I'm already very busy," I said. "Thanks, but I can't take on anything else. You won't have to deal with Wolfsheim," Gatsby said. He thought I was avoiding the business connection he had mentioned during lunch, but I told him that wasn't the reason. He stood there a little longer, hoping I'd start talking, but I was lost in thought. So he finally went home unwillingly. The night had left me cheerful and light-headed, and I think I fell into a deep sleep as soon as I walked through my front door. I didn't know if Gatsby ended up going to Coney Island, or how long he kept walking through his brightly lit house. The next morning at work, I called Daisy and invited her for tea. "Don't bring Tom," I warned. "What?" she asked. "Don't bring Tom." "Who's Tom?" she replied, pretending not to know. It was raining hard on the day we had agreed on. At 11 o'clock, a man in a raincoat showed up with a lawnmower and said Gatsby had sent him to cut my grass. That reminded me I'd forgotten to tell my housekeeper to return, so I drove to the village to look for her and also to buy cups, lemons, and flowers. The flowers weren't necessary, though, because at 2 o'clock, a greenhouse full of them arrived from Gatsby's. At 3, the front door opened nervously, and Gatsby walked in quickly. He wore a white flannel suit, a silver shirt, and a gold tie. He looked pale and tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "Is everything okay?" he asked right away. "The grass looks great, if that's what you mean," I replied. "What grass?" he asked, confused. "Oh, the grass in the yard." He looked outside but seemed not to see anything. "Looks very nice," he said vaguely. "One of the newspapers said the rain might stop around 4. I think it was the Journal. Do you have everything you need for, tea?" I took him to the pantry. He glanced at the housekeeper, and then we both examined the 12 lemon cakes I had bought. "Will these be okay?" I asked. Of course. Of course. They're fine," he said, then added weakly, "Old sport. Around 30,000. The rain lightened into a damp mist, with only a few thin drops falling like dew. Gatsby sat staring blankly at a copy of Clay's Economics, distracted by the Finnish housekeeper's footsteps in the kitchen and occasionally glancing toward the foggy windows. as if something strange were happening outside. Eventually, he stood up and told me in a hesitant voice that he was going home. Why? I asked. No one's coming for tea. Don't be silly. It's just 2 minutes to 4. He sat back down unhappily like I'd forced him to. At the same time, we heard a car pulling into the drive. We both jumped up. I went outside, feeling nervous. A large open car was coming up under the wet lilac trees. It stopped, and Daisy looked out from under a lavender hat with a bright, excited smile. Is this really where you live, my dearest? Her voice was so lively and beautiful that I listened to it for a moment before I understood the words. A wet strand of hair stuck to her cheek like blue paint, and her hand was covered in shining raindrops when I helped her out of the car. Are you in love with me? She whispered. Or is that why I had to come alone? That's Castle Rakren's secret, Ferdy. Then she said seriously, his name is Ferdy. Does the gasoline bother his nose? I don't think so, she said innocently. Why? We went inside. To my surprise, the living room was empty. What is? She asked. Just then, we heard a polite knock at the door. I opened it to see Gatsby standing there, soaking wet, pale as a ghost, his hands deep in his coat pockets, looking at me with a desperate expression. Still with his hands in his pockets, he walked past me into the hallway, turned sharply like he was on a tightrope, and went into the living room. It wasn't funny at all. I could feel my heart pounding as I closed the door against the rain. Then I heard a nervous laugh and Daisy's voice. I didn't want to stand around in the hall, so I walked into the room. Gatsby was leaning against the fireplace, still trying to look relaxed. But it was clear he was very tense. His head was tilted so far back that it rested on the broken mantel clock, and his eyes, full of emotion, were fixed on Daisy. She was sitting nervously but gracefully on the edge of a stiff chair. His eyes flicked briefly to me, and he tried to laugh but stopped suddenly. At that moment, the old clock he was leaning on nearly fell, so he caught it carefully and put it back. Then he sat stiffly on the sofa, resting his elbow and chin. I'm sorry about the clock, he said. My face felt hot with embarrassment. I couldn't think of anything normal to say. It's just an old clock, I said awkwardly. For a moment, I think we all thought the clock would break. We haven't met in many years, Daisy said plainly. 5 years last November, Gatsby answered automatically. His reply made us all pause again. I quickly asked them to help me make tea, and the lively Finnish maid brought it on a tray. While we drank tea, things felt more natural. Gatsby moved into the shadows and watched Daisy and me with nervous eyes. But since staying calm was not the goal, I found a reason to leave as soon as I could. Where are you going? Gatsby asked worriedly. I'll be back. I need to talk to you before you go. He followed me into the kitchen, he said, shaking his head. You just nervous, I said quickly. Daisy's nervous too. She's nervous? He asked, surprised. Just as much as you are. Don't speak so loudly. You're acting like a child, I said impatiently. And you're rude. Daisy's sitting there all alone. He raised his hand to stop me, looked at me with a sad look, and quietly went back to the other room. I left through the back door just like Gatsby had earlier, and ran to hide under a big tree with thick leaves that blocked the rain. The rain was heavy again, and my lawn, freshly cut by Gatsby's gardener, was full of muddy puddles. From under the tree, I could only see Gatsby's huge house. I stared at it for half an hour, like a philosopher studying a church steeple. The house had been built by a brewer during the period craze 10 years before, and there was a story that he had offered to pay 5 years' taxes on nearby cottages if their owners would cover their roofs with straw. Maybe when they refused, his plan to start a family fell apart. He soon became ill. His children sold the house, still with a black wreath on the door. Americans, though willing to serve sometimes, have always been stubborn about being peasants. After half an hour, the sun came out again. The grocer's car arrived at Gatsby's house with food for his servants' dinner, though I was sure Gatsby himself wouldn't eat anything. A maid started opening the upper windows of the house. She appeared briefly in each window and, leaning out of a big middle window, spat thoughtfully into the garden. It was time for me to go back. While it was raining, I thought I could hear the soft murmur of their voices, sometimes growing louder with emotion. But now, in the quiet, it seemed that silence had fallen inside the house as well. I went inside, making as much noise as possible in the kitchen, without knocking over the stove, but I don't think they heard me. They sat at opposite ends of the couch, looking at each other as if some question was in the air. And all embarrassment had disappeared. Daisy's face was wet with tears. When I came in, she jumped up and began wiping her face with a handkerchief in front of a mirror. But Gatsby had changed in a way that surprised me. He seemed to shine quietly, without saying or doing anything joyful. But a new feeling of happiness filled the small room. "Oh, hello, old sport," he said, as if we hadn't seen each other for years. I thought for a moment he might shake my hand. "The rain has stopped, has it?" When he noticed the sunlight sparkling in the room, he smiled like a weather reporter who was happy to see the sun again. He told Daisy happily, "What do you think? The rain has stopped." "I'm glad, Jay." Her voice was full of pain but also unexpected happiness. "I'd like to show her around. Are you sure you want me to come?" "Absolutely, old sport." Daisy went upstairs to wash her face. I felt embarrassed for not having clean towels ready while Gatsby and I waited on the lawn. "My house looks good, doesn't it?" he asked. "Look how the front shines in the light." I agreed it was beautiful. Yes, he looked carefully at every door and tower. It took me just 3 years to earn the money to buy it. "I thought you inherited your money." "I did, old sport," he said automatically. "But I lost most of it in the big panic, the war panic." I think he wasn't really sure what he was saying, because when I asked about his business, he said, "That's my business." "Oh, I've been in several businesses," he corrected himself. "I worked in drugs and then in oil, but now I'm not in either." He looked at me more carefully. "Have you thought about what I suggested the other night?" Before I could answer, Daisy came outside. The brass buttons on her dress shone in the sunlight. "That big house there," she said, pointing. "Do you like it?" "I love it, but I don't understand how you live there all alone. I always keep it full of interesting people, day and night. People who do interesting things, famous people." Instead of going the short way along the Sound, we took the longer road and entered through a big side gate. Daisy quietly admired different parts of the castle-like house against the sky, admired the gardens, and the smells of jonquils, hawthorn, plum blossoms, and kiss-me-at-the-gate flowers. It was strange to reach the marble steps and see no movement or bright dresses coming in and out of the door. The only sounds were birds singing in the trees. Inside the house, as we walked through rooms decorated like the times of Marie Antoinette and old restoration salons, I felt like there were hidden guests behind every couch and table, told to stay quiet until we passed. When Gatsby closed the door of the Merton College library, I thought I heard the owl-eyed man laugh quietly like a ghost. We went upstairs through bedrooms covered with rose and lavender silk and bright new flowers, through dressing rooms, pool rooms, and bathrooms with sunken baths. We even saw a messy man in pajamas on the floor doing liver exercises. It was Mr. Sterry, Clip Springer, the boarder. I had seen him walking near the beach earlier that day. Finally, we reached Gatsby's own apartment, a bedroom, a bathroom, and an Adams-style study. There we sat and drank some chartreuse from a cupboard in the wall. Gatsby kept looking at Daisy, measuring everything in his house by how she reacted. Sometimes he looked around in a confused way, as if nothing was real now that she was actually there. Once he almost fell down the stairs. His bedroom was the simplest room, except for a dresser decorated with a dull gold toilet set. Daisy happily took the brush and smoothed her hair. Gatsby sat down, shaded his eyes, and began to laugh. "It's the funniest thing, old sport," he said, laughing. "I can't. When I tried to." He changed moods quickly, going from embarrassment and joy to wonder at Daisy's presence. He had dreamed about this moment for a long time and waited with strong hope. Now, after the excitement, he was tired like a clock that was wound too tight. After a moment, he opened two big cabinets full of suits, dressing gowns, ties, and shirts stacked like bricks. "I have a man in England who buys clothes for me. He sends a selection every spring and fall." He pulled out shirts and threw them on the table. Linen, silk, and flannel in many colors and patterns. As we admired them, Daisy suddenly bent down and cried loudly. "They're such beautiful shirts," she sobbed, her voice soft in the fabric. "It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before." After seeing the house, we planned to visit the gardens, swimming pool, hydroplane, and summer flowers. But it started raining again outside Gatsby's window. We stood looking at the water's surface. "If it weren't for the mist, we could see your home across the bay," Gatsby said. But he seemed lost in thought. Maybe he realized that the meaning of the green light was now gone forever. It had once seemed close to Daisy, like a star near the moon. Now it was just a green light on a dock. He had lost one of his magical dreams. I walked around the room, looking at unclear objects in the dim light. A large photo of an old man in a yachting outfit caught my attention, hanging on the wall above Gatsby's desk. "Who is this?" I asked. "That's Mr. Dan Cody, old sport," Gatsby said. The name sounded familiar. "He's dead now." Outfit on the bureau. He looked young, with his head thrown back confidently, maybe about 18 years old. "I love it," Daisy said. "The pompadour? You never told me you had a pompadour or a yacht." "Look at this," Gatsby said quickly. I was about to ask about the rubies when the phone rang and Gatsby answered. "Well, I can't talk now. I said a small town. He should know what a small town is." "Well, he's no use to us if Detroit is his idea of a small town." He hung up the phone. "Come here quickly," Daisy shouted from the window. The rain was still falling, but the dark clouds had moved away in the west, and pink and golden fluffy clouds floated over the sea. "Look at that," she whispered, then after a moment said, "I wish I could take one of those pink clouds, put you in it, and float you around." I wanted to leave then, but they didn't want me to go. Maybe my presence made them feel more comfortable being alone. "I know what we'll do," Gatsby said. "We'll have Klipspringer play the piano." He left the room, calling Ewing, and came back a few minutes later with a shy, slightly tired young man wearing shell-rimmed glasses and thin blonde hair. He was dressed casually in a sports shirt, open at the neck, sneakers, and light-colored duck trousers. "Did we interrupt your exercises?" Daisy asked politely. "I was asleep," Mr. Klipspringer said, embarrassed. "Well, I had been asleep. Then I got up." "Klipspringer plays the piano," Gatsby said quickly. "Don't you, Ewing, old sport?" "I don't play well." "I hardly play at all." "I'm out of practice. We'll go downstairs," Gatsby interrupted. He turned on the lights, and the gray windows disappeared as the house filled with light. In the music room, Gatsby turned on a single lamp next to the piano. He lit Daisy's cigarette with a shaking match and sat with her on a couch far across the room, where the only light came from the shining floor reflecting the hall light. When Klipspringer played The Love Nest, he turned around on the bench and looked for Gatsby in the dark. I'm out of practice, you see. I told you I couldn't play. I'm out of practice. Don't talk so much, old sport, Gatsby ordered. The wind blew loudly, and thunder rumbled softly along the sound. Lights were turning on all over West Egg. Electric trains carried men home through the rain from New York. It was a time of great change, and excitement filled the air. One thing's sure and nothing's surer. The rich get richer and the poor get children. I saw confusion on Gatsby's face again, as if a small doubt had come into his happiness. Almost 5 years. There must have been moments that afternoon when Daisy was less than his dream, not because of her, but because his dream was so large. His illusion was bigger than her, bigger than everything. He had put all his energy into it, adding more to it, decorating it with every bright idea he found. No fire or newness can challenge what a man keeps in his hopeful heart. As I watched him, Gatsby moved a little. He took Daisy's hand, and when she whispered something softly in his ear, he turned toward her with strong feelings. I think her voice affected him the most. It was warm and full of emotion, like a song that never dies. They forgot I was there, but Daisy looked up and gave me her hand. Gatsby didn't seem to notice me anymore. I looked at them again, and they looked back at me from far away, full of powerful life. Then I left the room, walked down the marble stairs into the rain, leaving them alone together.